Hi, dear participants of the webinar. Let's check the sound first of all to make sure that I'm not alone here. So if you can hear me, please write +1 in the chat window or questions window. +1 are coming, so that's fine. Okay, and if you can see the first slide of presentation, function point analysis, also please write +2 into the chat window. +2. Great. So we are starting our webinar on function point analysis and on how to make estimations in function points or to use function points as additional source of estimation information. As you can see on these presentations, materials are adopted from David Consulting Group. So these materials are under copyright by David Consulting Group, and I'm using it because they allow it to do for me, but you make sure that if you are going to copy these materials, you should copy this copyright sign as well. I'm Svetlana Mukhina and I work at Agile Practice. I mostly do Agile webinars, Agile coaching and Agile trainings, but I was on the training, on 4 days training about function point analysis, and due to lots of questions that people were asking me about this method, this approach, I decided to make a webinar. So I'm not an expert in function points, but but I can provide you background, basics information on function point analysis. People are saying that I'm broadcasting on 2 screens. Okay, let me check how to fix it. Well, I see that I'm broadcasting only the one screen. Do you see only one screen now, or you still continue to see? Okay, now it's good. Okay, that's better. So we can continue. I will talk quite fast for this webinar because there is lots of information. And what I also would like to recommend you is that you stay focused during this webinar, at least during it part when I will start talking about examples, how to calculate the function point, because otherwise you will not be able to track my speech, and you will not be able then to map the examples to the final number of counted story points. First of all, some theoretical information about function points. So while we are estimating projects, we should take into account very different factors, and project size is one of it. It's just one of the factors that we should count during estimation. Project size can be in function point and can be in story points, or can be in anything else that your client and you as a provider of services, of products, is understanding. So if you both understand in what you're making the calculation, that is fine. But please take into consideration that function points does not provide you directly man hours, or does not provide you directly some estimation that your client will for sure understand. So you can make estimation in function points if people who are you providing your estimations are understanding this estimation method. And function points, as you can see here, is just one of the factors, one of the components of project estimation. You could also take into account changes that are coming to your project. People, what team do you have? What skills set do you have on the project? How much time probably you will have on defects fixing? Critical resources. What are critical resources for your project? Maybe it's some computers. Maybe it's something else that is in limited rate. Also, man hours. You should also think about how long the project will take in man hours, and exactly what is the duration, what is the expected from the client of you, the duration of the project. For instance, you must finish this project by the end of the summer. So you should understand how much resources, how much budget do you need to finish it by the end of the summer. And function point analysis can help you in this. But again, if you understand what function points means for your team and for your client, and you probably need to have some historical data in function point estimation. So function point is not a brand new concept. Maybe some of you came to this, by the way, maybe some of you came to this webinar thinking that I will speak about story points. Story points is absolutely different stuff. It's also about sizing of the project, but function points is different from story points. Just to manage your expectations that now we're talking about function points. Function points, it's not, as I already said, not brand new term, not brand new concept. As you can see from here, it was like developed, invented in 1970. And since that time, it was improved, it was investigated, and the knowledge corpora was gathering for this method. Now you can see that there are lots of organizations who can provide consulting services for function points analysis. And if you don't want to count function points by yourself, you can just address this question to these organizations. They will make this counting for you. There is also lots of trainings on these topics, lots of webinars, and lots of publications on this topic. To set some vocabulary. So what is actually a function point? Function point is a unit of measure for quantifying software deliverable. In other words, we're measuring functionality from the user point of view. So what is function point? Functional because we are measuring functionality. A user is a person or a thing or other system that communicates or interacts with the software at any time. There is also such term as user view. In the functional user requirements, it is perceived is the functional user requirements as perceived by the user. So how requirements are understood by a user. It means user view. Functional user requirements is a subset of user requirement that describes what the software shall do, again, in functions, in terms of tasks or services. But please make sure that you're talking about functions, not code of lines or something like this. What also I need to say before we are going to go deeper into counting function points is that we are calculating functional requirements. We are not calculating non-functional requirements. So here you can see what is functional requirements is about and what is non-functional. Just to set the context, we are focusing only on functional requirements. What is pro and what is cons for this concept? What are disadvantages and what are advantages of function point analysis? First of all, function point can be used to size software application accurately. So you can estimate the size of your software, the size of your project using function points. What is good news about it also? That function points can be counted by various people, by different people from different organizations, but they will get more or less the same number of function points for a particular project. So it's not like about story points when each team can have its own story point estimations. Here, function points are the same for the same application when calculated by professionals, by people who are doing this counting as their job. Actually, there are people who are certified to do function points calculations. And in order to learn this and in order to get these certificates, you have to work hard and estimate lots of projects. And in general, if you are just going to use function points, you need to make sure that you have time to learn how to do it, and you have time also to get the experience in these calculations. Because today I'm going to show you a couple examples how to do it. In order to go deeper, because function points is a huge domain of knowledge. It's like project management, or maybe it's like object-oriented programming. So function points is a huge domain of knowledge, and what I'm going to show you now is just a small part of it. And there are people who are doing it by years, the function point analysis and function point counting. When they see the requirements, they see directly how much function point it can consist of. So they see these patterns in the application. In order to do this, you need to practice a lot. Maybe you don't need to do it by yourself or by other team members. Maybe you can have one person in team, one person in program, one person in organization who can do function point analysis. It's not necessary to involve all the team in this, but you need to have a knowledgeable person in function point analysis in the team to use this method correctly. Also, function point can be estimated by proxy. It means, again, that you don't need to have these people in your team. Function points can be understandable to non-functional users when they provided some trainings, when they provided some information about function points. Function points can be used to determine whether a tool, a language, or environment is more productive when compared with others. When you get the number in function points, you can then check how this project is implemented using this technology, or how this project is going to be implemented using these skills of the people, so you can compare them. What is the most effective way to deliver this project? So low risk of inflation comparing to lines of code or story points method. Absolutely true. Story points tends to inflate. But here you have lots of rules for function point analysis. And it means that it's difficult to have your own understanding of function points. There is defined understanding. There is defined rules, and there are lots of them, rules and exceptions. And when you're doing these calculations in function points, you're following exact rules. That is why the deviations are hardly possible. It can be used on different function point analysis, can be used in different phases of the project, and we're going to see it from the next slide. And function points can be derived from requirements, but you need to have these requirements. So if you don't have requirements, you can't calculate function points. That is the point, actually. What are the cons? Function points hardly can be used when you're going to calculate fixing problems, when you're going to calculate bugs. It's not appropriate to do function point analysis for bug fixing. When maintenance programming, when is done by one or two individuals, individual skill set become a major factor when measuring this type of work. So people can influence on project duration, on project estimation. And when you have limited resources for this project, probably you'd better ask these resources, these exact people, how much it will take to finish the project, or how many hours they need. And not do just function point estimation, because you don't have any other team. You have just these people to work. And development team don't take part in the estimation. Actually, it is pro and it is con. It is con because, again, there is risks that something is not counted during the function point estimation by the professional who's professional in function point analysis, not in development. And also the team will not see as we are doing in Agile, as we are doing in Scrum. But it is also good in some point of view, because you don't need to take your team from the project and to ask them to estimate the project. You can have a special person who can do this estimation in function point again, and then this person can provide this estimation function point to your client. But again, if your client understands what function point means for him or her. People are asking me to speak a bit slower. Guys, you will have these presentations recorded. And as for examples, I will show examples further in the presentation. So you will have the recording of this presentation, and you will have the slides. So it will be easier for you then to understand what's going on. But I'm trying to provide you, first of all, overview of function point analysis, and also some examples, how it exactly look like and how to use formulas. So we're going further. So on what stages you can use function points? You can't use function points during proposal when you don't have enough requirements. But when you have enough requirements, you can start using function points, because you can convert, you or specialist in function point analysis can convert requirements into function points. You can use it during design phase. You can use function point analysis or calculation during delivery phase. And what is interesting, when you already done the project, you can also make the calculation on function points and see how it become different or how it become the same from the preliminary estimation during requirements phase. Or you can ask someone to make counting on function points of your project that is already done to understand in general how much this type of project can take from the team next time to do so in function points. So you can also do this function point analysis in different phases, but what you need to have is requirements or ready-made estimation, ready-made application. So requirements or ready-made application. And we're going to practical information. So process of function point estimation: just gather available documentation, determine the counting scope, the boundaries of the application. We will again talk about what are the boundaries of application. You need to define it before making function point counting. You need also identify and classify the base functional components. There are 5 types of base functional components that you need to take into consideration while doing function point estimation. It is internal logical file, it is external interface file, it is external input, external output, and external queries. We're going to talk about it in our presentation. So here is just overview of the whole process. Then you calculate in the function size, then you document function points and report the results. So what about boundaries? As you see here, so you gather in available information and then you define the next step, defining the boundaries. So what are the boundaries? The boundaries is a conceptual interface between the software under study and its users. So when you're focusing on your application or on some project that you're going to count that maybe encompasses several applications, you need to understand to what limit of this project you're going to count, because there are applications that are getting some data from other applications and doing, for instance, some calculations inside of it and passing these data to other applications. So you need to understand what applications you're counting. Are you counting only the application that is making the calculations, or you would like to also to develop the application that is passing data to this application that is making calculations? So you are defining the limits which you're counting, and you cannot move the boundary when you're doing calculation. So what is coming to your boundary is what you're counting. If you would like to move the boundary, you need to recount all already counted function points. So boundaries are not movable. Here you can see elements that we talked about. It is internal logical file, it is external input, external output, and external inquiry. We're missing here the fifth element, like external interface files. They can be outside of the application, but inside the application boundary. We're again going to talk about it. So here is just an overview. Here is the boundary. You can see it here. Here's the boundary of our application. There is some files inside, and there is also some processes that are coming in and coming out of the application. Types of count. What we count? We count installed applications, development projects, and enhanced projects. You should understand from this slide that you cannot count bugs, again with function point, and some improvements like in maintainability, improvements of code base, improvements like refactoring, improvements in performance of application. You can't count it using function points. So in function point, you count functions that are meaningful from the user view, from the user logical view. And we don't count non-functional requirements also. Here is like overview again of what we count inside the project. So if we defined that our project is installed application and it is not about bug fixing and it is not about maintenance, we are going deeper into this application and see what parts of application we are going to count. So here is the project type so that we are counting. And when the correct project type is defined, we start understanding what it's inside the project you're going to count. So it is functionality, ability to, it is logically grouped stores of data, and it is elementary process, like complete business flow or wizard. And we don't count lines of code, database and tables, and physical transaction screens. What I must say here is that sometimes you're counting like these internal logical files, as we talked about it a bit earlier. Internal logical files, and sometimes internal logical files is actually grouped stores of data, but it can be also a database or a table. So it can be that you're actually counting databases and tables, but these databases and tables representing for the user as logically grouped data. So you're not counting it in the application or in the developer's code, you're counting it again from the user point of view. Some questions are coming. I will not be able to answer it during this webinar, but I will try to prepare your answers in question answering session and share it together with you with the recording of this webinar. Types of data. Again, what data we are counting? Business data, reference data, and we don't count code data. So in general, it looks like this, and there is also information what I mean by business data, by reference data, like some dictionaries, and code data. It is not what we are counting with function points. And now we are going to the components. Here is the components, the elements of function point analysis that are important for counting, and we're going to have a close look to each of it. So let's first talk about internal logical file. It is data which resides within the application boundary and which is maintained, which is meant by maintained. This data can be added, can be changed, can be deleted, can be updated by the application. It is internal logical file, and again, it can be like database, but I will show you example, and it can be not like database. It can be just logically grouped data, for instance, information about the customer, where the customer lives, the address, the customer number, the customer second name, maybe the customer previous orders from if you have some shop and you are tracking your customers' information for this shop. So external interface file is a user recognizable group, again, a logically related data or control information which is referenced by the application being measured. So it is some information outside of the application, but this information is available for the application you're counting, and the application can refer to this information. And again, what we are not counting and what we don't mean by internal logical file and external interface file. And here is the example. So we're starting to talk about exercises and examples. The ones who were distracted, please come back to the webinar. So exercise, counting radio clock function points. Here we're not going to actually calculate the function points, but we will start with calculating the elements. These elements that we already seen on the previous slides. Let me show you it again. So we're going to count external inputs, external output, external inquiry, internal logical files, and external logical files that are outside of the application. So this simple clock have the following inputs. Like you can input it into this system. Set time, set alarm, set type of alarm, set volume, set, like you're setting something. There is also output, actions or events or processes. The processes is the correct word here. So these processes are coming outside of this software. It is alarm, it is sound, and it is display time. There is also internal data stores, like internal logical files, time data and radio data, and external data sources like external interface files that the software within this clock is contacting is radio frequency. And it is the main components of function point analysis. Let's see how we count actually the function points itself. In order to count it, you need to understand how much complexity and how much weight each of these components have. So inputs have its own weights and have its own complexity based on the other elements. Also, all these ELF, EIF, and outputs, external output and external inquiries, can have its own complexity and its own weights. Again, we're going deeper into calculations, and it can be a bit complicated for you to understand it, but I will try to show you with examples how to do it. So in general, the function point is about counting, and it's more difficult to understand than story points, much more difficult to understand than story points because it contains lots of rules. So the main idea here that you should understand that weight and complexity depends on how much reads and dats there are inside logical file. Read actually is a record element time is a user recognizable group or subgroup of data, and within reads you can have several dats. The more you have of these elements inside the internal logical file, the more weight it will have, the more complex it is, and the more weight it will have in our formulas. We're going to formulas on the next two slides. So external files can also have reads and dats. And in order to calculate internal and external files function points, you need to understand how much reads and how much dats it has. So internal logical files and external logical files complexity matrix. So first of all, we are calculating how much dats and reads it has. I will show you again on the next example how to do it, now just formulas. Then you deciding whether it has like low complexity, average complexity, or high complexity. Then you go to the formula and put their corresponding numbers to the low, average, or high formula to the external logical file or external interface file. And then you get the number in function point. So how to do it actually? How to do it? So counting application data. Now we are focusing only in internal or external logical files. We are not talking about their processes, the inquiries, their internal or external inquiries. So just the files. So here we have some information, some requirements that came to us. There is customer, there is orders, and there is cast ID that contains same information as customer. So actually this same information as customer, you don't need to develop it in a separate way. You just use the customer information. From the user point of view, it is actually the same, cast ID and customer. So where is dats? Where is reads here? We can see that customer data, it is internal logical file. It resides, located inside the application we're counting for. And it have one read. So it is one read. Why it is one read? Okay. So because it is the group of information that is logically combined and there is no other subgroups of information inside of it. So it is counted as one read. There are lots of rules how to count it, but these rules have hundreds of pages. So I'm just showing an example how to do it for this particular example. If you would like to learn about rules, you need to go to vocabularies of function points counting, to some dictionaries, to some publications to understand the rules. Now just general picture. So on this example, as we already investigated, customer has one read, one logically combined information data set. And that is why we have one read here, one internal logical file, one read here. And it have less than 51 dats. Again, why less than 51 dats? We can calculate how much we have here. It looks like less than 51, right? And you see here the complexity of L. To get this complexity L, low complexity, you need to go back to formulas. Here is our formulas. And we're talking about internal logical files, as you remembered here. So we are going to this table, internal logical file. As we said, one read and less than 51 dats. It doesn't matter whether it is 1 or 2 or 3, it is low here and low here. So we're just counting, it is less than 51, because if it was more than 51, it was of average complexity, but it is low complexity. So that is why we have this low letter here, L, complexity. So how to calculate the weight then? Then we have this one ILF, one read. We calculated the complexity of L, and we're going to the formula. We're going back to the formula. We need now this formula. So ILF, internal logical file, and we have low complexity, and we have one file. It's just one file that we're talking about. There are one file for this, and we are putting this one number here. So 1 multiplied on 7 equals 7. So probably, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, but we are going to go further on this example. Maybe it becomes more clear. So we have, that is why it is weight in function points is 7. There is also order data in this example, as you see. So order data. And here, how much reds we have. So from this example, it's obvious, but sometimes the requirements are not so obvious. So here we have 3 reds. So again, one ILF file. This information is contained in one ILF file in one group about customers. But you can maybe, if you decide it in your application, or if you get the requirements in such a way that it will be 2 ILFs, then you count it as 2 ILFs. It depending on your requirements. But 1 ILF and 3 reds. Again, 3 reds. So it is important that you understand these examples. 3 reds. Record 1, record 2, record 3. Like ship to, details, and billing. It is 3 reds. And these 3 reds have multiple debts. Multiple debts, but not more than 51. Not more than 51, but more than 19. So here we have the delta between 19 and 51. And we're talking about average complexity. Again, how we getting this average complexity? We're coming back to formulas and seeing ILF reds. So from 2 to 5, we have 3. So 3 is between 2 and 5. And we have more than 19, so that is why it is not low. And we have more, but we don't have more than 51, so it is average. So it is average complexity here, and we have complexity, but we don't have weight now, right? We're going to the next formula. So when you're doing calculating, you're going to refer these formulas all of the time. Probably you will learn it by heart, but for now we are using it on the screen. So ILF, average, so the first one was low, but now it is average. 1 multiplied on 10 equals 10. If you have 2 ILFs, then you will multiply 2 on 10. So in order to understand what complexity you're referring to reds and debts, but after this you're referring to the number of elements. When you define whether it is low, average, and high, you're referring to the number of ILFs or ERFs. So here is the example. It is one of the examples. The next one. Again, I'm not going to answer the questions till I provide you the whole information. Maybe it will become clear afterwards. Or again, maybe I will make a session on answering the questions, record it and send it to you. So transactional functions description. So as I already mentioned, there are 5 components like 2 files, ELF and EIF. So again, this slide with components, because like history or theoretical information, I don't think that it is very useful for you, but I think practical information, you need to understand five elements: external input, external output, external inquiry. We're going to talk about it right now. It is elementary processes, and also 2 types of file: internal logical file, and there is also the file that is outside of the application. It is not visible here. It is external interface file. So we talked about calculating weight, functional points for internal logical files, and now we're going to see how to calculate function points for primary so-called primary processes: external input, external output, and external inquiry. First of all, we're going to see what are these processes are about. So here it is. So a transaction function is an elementary process that provides functionality to the user to process data and is one of the following. It can be external input, an elementary process that processes data or control information set from outside the boundary. So when in your requirements you see such words as add, make inactive, allocate, and so on and so forth, so when you see these words, you can think that the requirements are talking to you about elementary process that is called external input. When you see when in your requirement such words as browse, display, inquire, extract, um, inquire, list, pick, list, view is an elementary process that is called external inquiry, and this process sends data or control information outside the boundary using data retrieval only. External output is an elementary process that sends data or control information outside the boundary and includes additional processing. So here is using data retrieval only for external inquiry, and here is for external output includes additional processing beyond that of an external inquiry. So it's different. It's processing, and it's just an external inquiry is just retrieving. So when you see words that can be like this: adjust, export, generate, notify, print, report, summary, you can think that requirements are telling to you about external output. So let's see also some hints how to identify it. So summary of functions. So alter the behavior of the system. So for which function it is important to change the behavior, to alter the behavior of the system. So when it is PI, it is primary intent of the transaction function. So function of the transaction function, but it's not the primary intent, it's sometimes present. So this summary table can also help you to identify what process you are dealing with, because depending on the process, you can have different formulas, and as a result, you can different calculations. We're going to see it again on example. So here, as you can see, again, the elements: internal logical file, external logical files, reads and debts that we already talked about, external output, external input, and external query. So here is the whole elements that we are talking about, and that is used directly into function point analysis. And here is the exercise. So counting application primary processes and data. So in this application, in this function point estimation, we are going to count not only a logical file, but we're going to count also processes. We have the following requirements. It is not mockups, it is not screens. It is something that the client provided to us and say, okay, here is the student data. It is similar like the data of the customer that we are discussed lately. So here was some data about customer in text mode, and here we can see the data of the student in a more visual mode, like student data, employee number, course date, course name, and it is primary keys. All these three numbers, it's primary keys. And there is some notes field. So here is the requirements, the group of data that is provided us from the client, and the client is telling us that it is student data, and we need to have it in our application. Also, the client would like that information about the student can be added, can be changed, and can be deleted. So, and when you're deleting information, you delete an employee number. When you're adding information, you are adding employee number. Maybe it's just an employee who is providing the trainings for the student. Maybe it's just some teacher number. Course date, course name, some notes. You should have also some button here like submit, yes, no, and you can get a row or confirmation message depending on successful or unsuccessful result of adding this information. You can also change information, and for changes the fields are exactly the same. This information again is provided to you by the client, by your business analyst, by your analyst, by someone who is providing you requirements. As you see here, student ILF is updated, and here student internal logical file, and this student data is for us is internal logical file. And also delete education information. You can also, but here you don't see notes. So you don't need to delete notes when you're deleting, probably because you're deleting by primary keys and you don't need to have notes here, like doing delete for notes because you already deleted all the necessary information and notes will be deleted automatically. So you need to delete only employee number, course date, course name. Again, you need some action like submit, yes, no, and you get a row on confirmation messages on return. How we're going to calculate all this stuff. So you have some descriptions. So add, change, delete. You can have it like this. You can add some additional information. So this field is like optional. I mean, you can describe it in your own way. I have described it in this way. So add, change, delete, student data. So about add, change, delete, it is external inquiry. So we are doing something with this information in the system, and so it is external inquiry. So this we from something else, from the user, like, or from other system. Let me go to the next, to this slide. So from the user, from the other system, this file about employee number, course data, notes is created. So it is external inquiry. So it is defined like this. All three of it. You can again go to the description of this elementary process and see that when you're talking about adding, so there is word add, there is word remove, like delete, and there is word change, you're talking mostly likely about external input. Elementary that process data or control information sent from outside, from the user or other application, outside the boundary of the application, but inside the application. I hope you're following me. There are no questions, but I hope that is no questions because I'm explaining it in a good way. So I hope you're with me. So student data and some elementary processes that we identified is external input. How are we going to calculate it? Here it is. And one ILF, so three primary processes and one internal logical file. We are talking here about file type referred. When we're counting elementary processes like internal inputs, external outputs, and external inquiries, we need also to understand how many files. It's like how many, let's better say, groups of data that can be in files or can be in databases. These processes are dealing with. How many files, groups of data, maybe tables, but from the user point of view, these processes are touching. So, and here we have one, because we have one file about the student. Here it is, right? So that is why we have one file type referred or referenced. I think it's file type referenced. So, and we have several DATs. Let's try to find where these DATs were these files and how we get these 16 function points for this application. So let's start with probably ILF file, because we already investigated how to count function points for ILFs. We know how to do it. So we can see here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 DATs, and one rat, because it is the group of data. It is called the group of data and it doesn't contain any subgroups. So it is similar, we can say that it is similar to this example, like customer data. So one information in one format. So we're going again back to formulas. So we're talking about ILF, we're talking about one rat, and we're talking about low complexity because we don't have more than 19 DATs. We have actually 4 DATs, 4 types of fields, 4 types of groups of small information, pieces of information. So here is DATs. That is why we have here low complexity. Then we take this low complexity and go to the next formula. So here it is, we're talking about ILF, low complexity, and we have one ILF. So we're using it here, 1. If we have average complexity, we use 1 here. If we have high complexity, we use 1 here. So for us, it is 7. You should remember this number, like 7. And we're going back. We're going to count now elementary processes that we identified it as internal inquiry. So for this, so it is, for that's here, as we already said, for ILF. For add function, how much DATs we have, with what elements, with how many elements this external inquiry is dealing with. we again need to go back to requirements. So it can be very tedious process for you, coming back to requirements, coming back to calculations, to formulas. But once you learned all of these, it becomes easier for you to estimate projects in function points. So we are talking about adding, and we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 DATs. That is why in this table we have 6. So 6 DATs. For change it is the same. For delete it is different. Why it is different for delete? Where we missed the one DAT. Let's go again back to requirements. So for delete we don't have nodes. As I already said, you don't need to delete nodes separately according to these requirements. Again, it's provided by your client. Maybe when your client provides you some other requirements, there will be different number of DATs for the same form. But for us it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is 5. And it is over there. So now we need to calculate function points. We need to, how much function points it will take us for student date. It was 7. Now we're calculating it for this. So for, again, we're calculated external inquiry, and we're going back to formulas. Back to formulas. Where it is. So here it is. We are looking, now we don't look in internal and external interface complexity matrix, but we are looking in external inquiry matrix because it is different for these processes. And looking through that. So one file referred, it is file type referred, one type of file, it was about student. It is here. So we are focusing on this line of the table. And as I already said, we have 6 DATs for this. So it is low complexity. And if it is low complexity, we're going to the next formula. It was this, and it is of low complexity, and it is 3. Actually, we can speed up this process. As you already probably mentioned, as you already probably understand that we have 3 types of external inquiry, and all of these processes have no more and no less than 5 and no more than 6. So we are talking about 6 or 5 DATs for 3 external inquiries. So we're going back to formula, and in order not to go back and forth for each of them, we're going to calculate it all at once. We are putting it into this matrix. So it is again low, 3 times low. I mean, one file type referred each time. And for each formula, we will get, for each external inquiry, we will get the complexity of low. But there are 3 of it. So we're looking in this formula again, external inquiry. Here we will have 1, but we will have it 3 times because we have 3 elementary process of external inquiry. So actually 3 on 3 will be 9. 3 on 3 will be 9. We can calculate it one by one, then we put in here 1, and then having here 3, then having 3 plus 3 plus 3, and it will be 9. I hope you're following me, okay? So we are coming back to our example again. So how we got this 16? So 9 plus 7, as you remember from ILF file, we got 16 function points. Again, when people would like to use function points instead of story points, instead of something else, they need to understand that there is lots of work that should be done in calculations. I showed you very simple examples, very simple. I think that applications that you are counting, that you are developing, the counting for these applications will be much more difficult. So you can calculate, you can make these calculations for really big projects, but you need to know how to calculate, do it on a regular basis, and do it accordingly to the rules. So you need trainings on this. You need webinars, you need to read something about this, because these rules are not so obvious as I showed you. I showed you examples and I showed you how to calculate it, but I prepared it and showing you. When you see the list of your requirements, you need to understand what are DATs here, what are RADs here, what are external logical files, what are external interface files, what are the primary processes within your requirements. So you need to be able to catch with your eye all these elements within your requirements and then calculate these elements. And actually, it's not enough. When you're ready, when you're actually good at calculation in function points, you need also probably to count non-functional requirements. So this type of the webinar, this type of information is not about functional but non-functional requirements. If you have lots of non-functional requirements in your system and you would like to include it in the estimation of function points, just look at this information and I will explain how to do it, because you can add this information if you like, if you still would like to use function points, certainly. So you need to understand several general system characteristics like non-functional requirements, non-functional factors that can influence on the project estimation as well. And you should put weight for your system, for your application, for your module of application, weight for each of these general system characteristics. It is weighted from 0 to 5, 0 not present or not influenced, for instance, performance, or for instance, end user efficiency or online update, not present or influence, average influence, significant. So you are just putting it as you feel. So there is no more direct instructions here. You're adding non-functional requirements weight to the functional point estimation. So you're putting these weights, you're calculating it. So for instance, for your system, complexity processing have moderate influence on your system, and multiple sites have also like moderate, but online data entry is strong influence throughout the whole your system. You're putting all these numbers, then you have some total degree of influences, you're combining it all, and then you use the formula. The formula is value adjustment factor is equals to total degree of influence multiplied on 0.01 plus 0.65. I don't remember where is this. I mean, I don't understand where these numbers are taken into formula, but the formula is the follows, and it is officially used when you're doing calculations in function points and would like to add non-functional weight to it. So you just need to use this formula as is. If you would like to Google about it, maybe you will find some information, but here it is the formula how to use weight of non-functional requirements into functional requirements. So when you use this formula, you can get like this number 1 and 2. So you get this value adjustment factor. When you get this value adjustment factor, what you're going to do, you are multiplying your functional point, unadjusted so-called functional point, on this VAF. So for the previous example, as we counted, we had, for this example, 16 function points. If you, for some reason, decided to add also some non-functional requirements to this very simple part of application, you should multiply, you should first of all fill this table, get this number, and then add this number to this formula, and you will get adjusted function points. What you need to understand here, that non-functional requirements can have great impact on your application and can change your estimation on 35%. So this data is taken from the statistics from David Consulting Group, who I passed the training with. So they're talking that your functional point estimation can be influenced by non-functional requirements on 35% plus or minus. So probably you should take it into account like non-functional requirements, because it is important for project estimation accuracy. And also here are the checklist, how you can do calculate on function points. Again, it's similar to the first checklist that I showed you at the beginning, like process of counting function points. You need to go all through these steps and also add this VAF, also add non-functional requirements, value adjustment factor to make your function point adjusted. Because without it, you don't have adjusted function point, but just function points. And now questions. We have 5 minutes. Guys, please provide me some information about how you understand. Just please write me. Okay, understood from 1 to 5. Okay, understood on 5 what I was talking about, understood on 3. 5 minutes completely understandable for you. This information was on this webinar. 1, you didn't understand anything. Just provide me some feedback, like in questions now. 5, 4, 4, 4, because you are understood 5, 3, 4 and minors, 3, 4, 4, and 5. I would say 3, 4, 4, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. Okay, okay. Need to listen one more time. Some people are asking, what does it mean 16 function point? Is it many? I don't know, because you need to compare it to other projects. If what you do is just this size of applications, the simple table and 3 elementary processes. But my personal view that 16 function points, it's really, really low. It's really, really not many. Because I think that the real projects, they're calculated in thousands on function points. Okay, people need to look through slides, understand it deeply. So as I understood, most people understand it on 3 or 4, okay. I hope it was helpful to you. I'm going to read some questions that were coming during the webinar. Can you please show non-functional examples again? Yes, I can show it. Here it is. More questions. Can we estimate 2-3 sprints or only one sprint for one time? So this function point estimation is not linked to any duration of the project. You're estimating requirements. So you're estimating as much requirements as you have. It doesn't mean that you estimate for 1 or 2 sprints ahead. If you have your requirements only for one sprint, you estimate it for one sprint. If you have requirements for 2 sprints, you estimated the 2 sprints requirements. But again, there is no direct conversion of function points into man-hours, the same like about story points. But if you learn the rules, you can provide very accurate estimations in function points. And if your client understands what function point means, then you always will be on the same page in these estimations. And like people are telling to me, and I heard on this training, that this method provide high accuracy. Because again, it have lots of rules, and the rules are very rigid, the rules are very tight. How should we count refactoring or bug fixing? I don't know, it's not covered by this method, by functional point analysis. What about power? I haven't got the question about power. There is the question about 51 for each red or for all of them. Here I know what you are talking about. We were discussing this example about customer and about orders. And here we were calculating no more than 51 for 3 of them. So we're calculating the overall amount, because we're calculating here the 3. And in formula, you're using these numbers like 3 for reds, the number of reds, and we're using the number of deaths for these reds. Some people are writing that this approach is appropriate only for small projects or for small functions. No, it is not correct. This approach is used for very, very huge projects, and there is actually a software that can help you in these calculations. But again, without knowledge, you can't do estimation in functional points. You need to understand, you need to know all the rules, how to do it, or you can have like consulting services from, for instance, David Consulting Group. You can go to these people, provide them the requirements and tell them, guys, please estimate me this project in function points. Or you can use some software that can help you. I'm not using this software, so I can't recommend you what to use exactly. By the way, about some materials, additional materials, I recommend you to go to these David Consulting Group webinars and publication sections, and to trainings if you would like to go through some trainings. But I think that the trainings are happening mostly in the United States on function points. What I will also provide for Luxoft employees, I will provide additional materials additionally to this presentation, because there is an agreement between David Consulting Group and Luxoft that these materials can be provided. I asked the trainer and she told me that I can provide you some additional information, not only the one that I'm providing you into this webinar. I can provide you some information from the training that I passed that happened within Luxoft. And also I'm going to provide you the quiz, the test on function point, and you can test yourself how you understood the function points. So you will get it as in follow-up email, together with the recording of this presentation and the video. I think I will prepare it to you by the end of this week. And again, go to these additional resources. If you would like to understand how to calculate function points, if you just would like to have some big picture, so big picture was provided on this webinar, but if you need it as your profession, you can go deeper into this topic. There is some information about agile events, so I'm mostly doing agile events, so there is also some information about here, and I'm going to go further in about questions. Kind of adjusted function points. Haven't got the question because there is function points that we counted. When you add in here the weight of non-functional requirements, you will get in the number. For instance, 16 function points multiplied or sum on some one dot. Let me see. I think I have an example of what you're asking for. So here it is. So, for instance, the project was counted like 100 function points, and also you would like to add here weight of non-functional requirements, and you calculated this weight, and for some reason this weight become 1 and 1, 1.1, like. Then you multiplied 100 on 1.1 and get the final number, like 110 function points. Here is adjusted function points, and non-adjusted function points is just 100. Okay. Any way to convert function point in man hours? I'm not sure about it. I don't know this, so I don't have this information. But what I can suggest to you is if you're already calculating function points for your projects, then you probably can gather some historical data and then make some correlation between your man hours and function points. So it is the correct way actually as Agile is doing. We're experimenting, we're trying to do something, and then from our experience, we are providing some metrics. Can you clear on practical implementation of this method in project management? So for project management, if you know how to do the project calculation in function points and your client know about function points, so you're, as I already said, you're calculating here the size of your project. And we need the first slide. Here it is, the first slide. You're calculating it. And when you both know what is meant for you, 100 function points, it means that you know how long it will take for you to do this project, actually. When you're taking into consideration your people, your resources, changes that coming into the system. So it can help you in your estimation. But again, if you're estimating according to the rules and when your client know what is function points, it is similar as about story points. The clients can make contracts when they are paying to you for function points or for story points. For story points, I know the examples from practice. When clients are paying for story points, but in our case, like for function points, if they know what they get for these function points. Can we express 16 function points in money? If you would like, if you know how much for your team to develop 16 points will cost, then you can. Do you have a plan to repeat it in Russian? If I have lots of requests to do it in Russian, if you're in your feedback forms, write to me that you need it in Russian, that you're really interested in the topic and you're going to use it on your projects, then I will repeat this webinar in Russian. Is that standard Luxoft conversion rate into man hours? No, I don't think, I don't know about it. I think, okay, I don't know about it, not sure. How it can be used with continuously changing requirements? Well, when these requirements are business user requirements and not like maintenance requirements, not refactoring requirements, then you can calculate these newly coming requirements and adding it to the project. I mean, there is, I think you have a number of like 100 story points, new requirements came of 16 story points. But again, here is very simple examples. When I'm talking about 100 or 16, we need to talk about thousands of story points, of function points. So you can add or you can exclude some function points. Oh, how much function points will be for low complexity and 2ILF? Okay, let's go to formulas. So I'm going to answer now the questions. So if you ask the question, just stay with me for the next 15 minutes and I will try to answer it. Formulas. Here is the formulas, and you're talking about 2ILF files, and they are of low complexity, so you need to multiply 2 on 7, and it gets 14. I think it is what you're asking for. If you have lots of deaths and lots of rats, probably it will become average complexity, then you will have here like 2 multiplied on 10. But again, this complexity depends on these formulas, on the next formulas, on this one. This formula is about complexity, and this formula is about weights. How to use the point for developer estimate? Could it be counted somehow to time? I don't think that. Okay, someone is coming to this room. Just let me check. Guys, I need to go. Sorry, the room is booked. I have 2 minutes left. So let me see, maybe, oh man, there are so much questions. Okay, probably I will make a recording of answering, or I will send these answers by emails because I need to finish the webinar now. Thank you for coming. Provide me your feedback and provide me your feedback about necessity of this webinar in Russian. So see you, have a good day and have a good week. Goodbye.